Okay, so what I'm going to be teaching you guys is two things today. The very first thing I'm going to be teaching you is, remember last class, let's take a right triangle and we're going to remember SOHCAHTOA. So, and I'm going to leave this up here. Ka toa. I'm going to leave this up here to make sure that you guys can remember this for this lesson. Now, just to review, last class we wrote down trig ratios. Let's say, for example, this is a 3, 4, 5 right triangle, and here's angle A. And if I said, what is sine of angle A? Remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So from this angle right here, the opposite over hypotenuse is equal to 3/5. What's, for example, tangent of angle A? Tangent, remember, is equal to opposite over adjacent. So from angle A, opposite, which is 3, adjacent is the other side that touches that angle besides the hypotenuse. Well, what I'm going to be asking you guys to do now today is this. I'm going to be asking you to find this specific angle. And it's really easy. Whenever I ask you to find a specific angle, you set up either sine, cosine, or tangent of that angle. And this is, you need a calculator for this. This is how you do it. If we want to find this angle, we would do inverse sine. This inverse button is on your calculator, and wherever sine was, sine of inverse is right next to it. You only use the inverse button whenever you're trying to find a missing angle. That's it. Just a missing angle. So on your calculator, you're going to do sine inverse of 3 divided by 5. So remember when on your calculator before I did, all right, find sine of 3/5, and then you did sine 3 divided by 5, press equals. Well, now what you're going to do is you're going to find the value of this, but you're going to do the inverse of it to get an actual angle. So if you're using your iPhone, or you're using a calculator that doesn't display everything, what you're going to do is this. You're going to do 3 divided by 5, press equals, then press the second button, and then sine. It's going to spit you out an angle, which is this angle right here. Or, for example, tangent. You can use any trig function as long as you set up the proportion or the fraction correctly. So if I wanted to find this angle using tangent, I would do inverse tangent 3/4 and press equals. If you have a graphing calculator, you can literally just plug it into this. Tangent inverse 3 divided by 4, press equals. If you have a calculator that displays all the numbers in front, as you're typing it in, you just do second tangent, which it'll bring up to the screen, tangent inverse 3 divided by 4, and press equals. You have to make sure it's in degrees as well. If you're using a basic mathematical calculator or an iPhone, you're going to have to do it backwards. You're going to have to go 3 divided by 4, press equals, and then the second button, and then tangent inverse. Press it, and then it'll spit you out the angle. Okay, with that said, let's see if you can solve for this missing angle on a triangle. I am going to, let's say, sometimes they're going to give you only 2 different angles. Sometimes they're going to give you, 2 different sides. Sometimes they're going to give you 3 sides. So let's say we have a triangle like this. I got to get new pens. This is 39 degrees, or 39. This is 10. And you need to find this angle. See if you can do this. Plug this in your calculator. Pause this video and see if you can do inverse of whatever the trig function is. Okay, let's see if you got it. So from this angle, this is my opposite and this is my hypotenuse. So I'm going to use sine, but I do inverse, and I only do inverse when I'm trying to find a specific angle. So inverse sine, opposite, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Inverse sine 10 divided by 39. And you should have gotten approximately 15 degrees. If you plugged it in correctly and you didn't get 15 degrees, make sure your calculator is in degrees and not radians. Okay, I'm going to give you one more before I move on to the next lesson. Okay, so let's take another right triangle. And this is the angle that you're supposed to find. This is 68. And this is 51. Let's see if you can find that angle. Pause it, see if you can find that angle. Okay. If you pause it, you should have set it up from this angle right here. This is my adjacent. This is my hypotenuse, but I don't need this. And this is my opposite. So tangent, and it's the inverse on your calculator. Why? Because you're trying to find the angle. Tangent is the only one that has an opposite and adjacent. So tangent's equal to opposite, which is 51, over adjacent, which is 68. This is what you plug into your calculator, and you're going to get approximately, 37 degrees. That's how you find missing angles. Now, I'm going to teach you how to find a missing side. And this is a little more in depth. And I am going to give you step by step how to do it. Okay, so let's say you have a right triangle. And they tell you this angle is 40 degrees. The hypotenuse is 80, and you need to find the other side. Okay. This is on your notes. On your notes today, I give you step by step how to find the missing side. Very first step I say is write down the angle that they give you, which is 40. That's the very first step. Step number 2, list the 2 important sides from this angle. From this angle, the side that I'm trying to find is my opposite from this, and the side that they give me is my hypotenuse. That's step number 2. Step number 3 is write down the trig function next to the angle. So sine is the only one that has the opposite and hypotenuse. So I have sine of 40. Next thing, step number 4. Set up your proportion. Sine is equal to opposite, which is x, over hypotenuse, which is 80. Here is your proportion. Remember with proportions, how do you solve proportions? You cross multiply. So when you cross multiply, you end up with x times 1 equals 80 times sine of 40. Now you have to, this is what you plug into your calculator. See if you can plug that in your calculator right now. See if you're going to get, see if you can do this to get an approximate answer of 51. See if you can plug this in your calculator. All right, you should have paused it, seeing if you could have plugged in 80 times sine 40. If you have a graphing calculator or a calculator that displays everything as you type it in, you just plug it in super simple. 80 times sine 40 plus equals. If you do not have a graphing calculator, you have to do everything backwards. So if you're using a basic mathematical calculator or an iPhone, you have to do everything backwards. What you're going to do is this. You're going to press 40 and then the sine button, and then times 80, and then equals. You should get approximately 51. Okay. Let's try another one. So what you guys are going to be doing today is, number 1, you're going to be finding missing angles. Number 2, you're going to be finding missing sides. That's it. Finding missing angles is always the inverse. Finding missing sides is the step-by-step what I give you. Okay, so let's do, here's another one. $57 degrees. Hold on. No, I'm going to change this. Let's say this is 30 degrees. This is 7, and this is X. You'll see why I'm telling you to change this in a second. All right, I'm going to go step by step to find this missing side. Step number 1, write down the angle that they give you, 30. Step number 2, list the 2 important sides, meaning your hypotenuse, opposite, or adjacent from this angle. So from this angle, this is my adjacent side, and it doesn't matter what angle you're coming from, because this is always your hypotenuse. Step number 3 is write down the trig function next to the angle. So the one that has the A and the H is cosine. So I'm going to write cosine 30. Now I'm going to set up my proportion. Cosine 30, I'm going to put this over 1, because I know I have to cross multiply in a second. Cosine 30 equals adjacent, which is 7, over hypotenuse, which is X. All right, now I'm going to, this is my next step, I have to cross multiply. Don't do anything by calculator. All you're doing in your calculator is the very last step. So when I'm going to cross multiply, X times cosine 30, X times cosine 30 equals 7 times 1. This situation, your X is not all by itself, so you have to do one more mathematical step to move this cosine 30 over to the other side. How do you move? Cosine 30 is a value on your calculator. If you were to plug cosine 30 in, you're going to get a decimal. So think of that decimal times X. How do you move multiplication over to the other side? You divide it. So I'm going to divide this side, just basic math, right? To move something over, you divide it if it's being multiplied. Divide both sides by cosine 30. This might be confusing you because this is, it's not a number yet. It is. This represents a decimal, so it's 7 divided by whatever that decimal is. Okay, so when I do this, I have, this cancels out, and then this is what I have to plug into my calculator. See if you can do this. You should. Let's see, what do you get? I'm looking at the answers. I think it's approximately 8. Let's see if you can get that. If you have a graphing calculator or one that displays all the numbers as you type them in as you go, you just plug it in, super simple. 7 divided by cosine 30 press equals. As long as your calculator is in degrees, you'll get approximately 8. If you're using your iPhone or a simple mathematical calculator, you have to do everything backwards. You have to go, well, not everything, but you'll see. You have to plug it in like this. 7 divided by, then you have to do this backwards. 30, cosine button, and then press equals. Don't just leave it at 30 cosine, because when you do 30 cosine, it's just giving you the decimal value of what cosine of 30 is. Once again, if you have the calculator where you have to do everything backwards, make sure it's in degrees, and you're going to go 7 divided by 30 cosine, press equals. Okay? So your assignment today is going to consist of finding missing angles and finding missing sides.